At the memorial, they gather to honor, remember, and reflect.
Almost as if I were touching him, touching Emmett himself.
One mother finds solace after years of sorrow.
It's almost as if I'm reliving the funeral, and yet my heart is full of joy that not only my son, but all of these other people who gave their lives for such a great cause are getting the recognition that is their due.
The names evoke the spirit of those who died in the fight against violence, hatred, and injustice. Built by the Southern Poverty Law Center in Montgomery, Alabama, the Civil Rights Memorial stands as a tribute to all who gave so much in that cause. And behind it are those who pay homage by carrying that great struggle forward.
Because it's important for them to see that this is not just a bunch of fellas that decided to meet on the street in Decatur.
They are the men and women of the Law Center, dedicated to seeking justice and fulfilling the promise of equality in America. For over 2 decades, the Southern Poverty Law Center has pursued the cause of the powerless whose human and civil rights have been violated. Many are too young to have been present in 1971 at the center's beginning in a 2-room office in Montgomery. But on the walls, they can still see the reminders of past campaigns. Reminders of those who had no other champions before the founding of the center. People like Beulah May Donnell, whose son was lynched by the Ku Klux Klan. Or Joanne Little, who was unjustly accused of murder. Or textile worker Nat Wilkins, whose health was knowingly sacrificed for corporate profits. Or teenagers who were sterilized by the state against their will. Morris Dees remembers the beginnings.
We looked around at the kinds of problems that existed in the South. For an example, we had the Voting Rights Act, but we had very few blacks and low-income whites that could get in elected office in the legislature, in city councils, and school boards.
In one of the first cases of its kind, the center took on the Alabama state legislature, which even in 1970 did not have a single African-American member. The white power structure had set up county-wide elections, which meant that the white majority could always defeat a black candidate. A successful suit by the Law Center forced the legislature to set up a system of electing members from each district separately. By 1980, there were 20 blacks in the legislature. Another prominent vestige of the Old South was to be found in the Alabama State Highway Patrol.
The issue was the total exclusion of blacks from the state troopers. In the 37-year history of the state troopers, there had never been a black state trooper, much less a black captain or major or any high-ranking trooper. The troopers not only operated under a regime of racism, as the court called it, they also enforced a regime of racism throughout the state.
In 1972, the Law Center sued the state and obtained an order mandating an end to discrimination. The first African-American trooper was sworn in a year later. But it was only the beginning of a 16-year struggle to gain compliance. Eventually, as it would in many other cases, the center carried the fight to the highest court.
And I think the Supreme Court case told them that there was no escaping their responsibilities under the law, and that the time for compliance was now.
Roll guys in and roll guys out! Roll guys in and roll guys out!
The police have to set an example for the rest of society. If they don't reflect the community, they can't serve it.
But the Law Center's legal work is not limited to seeking justice in the Deep South. In eastern Kentucky, many of the companies extracting coal have taken out much and given back little. The people suffer from poor housing and education, inadequate health care, and bad roads. The reason is a company-controlled tax structure that puts the major burden for human services on those least able to pay. The coal companies have contrived to avoid all but nominal taxes. One company paid less taxes on its 50,000 acres of land, the minerals, and its equipment than a miner paid on his house trailer and four-wheel drive truck. Through the courts, the Law Center has helped win millions of desperately needed tax dollars for some of Kentucky's poorest counties. In the late 70s, the Law Center encountered a foe that would shape its work for years to come. The Ku Klux Klan, in decline for a number of years, was reemerging and finding new targets. On the Texas Gulf Coast, Vietnamese refugees had been building a new life with few resources other than their own hard work. Their success was seen as an economic threat by local fishermen. Exploiting racial tension, the Klan moved in, announcing a Kaya, a Klansman I am, and set out to stop the Vietnamese community from fishing with threats of murder and arson. Mrs. Doy had survived years of violence in her native land, and now she faced it again.
The man was, pointed a gun to her.
Sợ chứ?
Yeah,
Scared.
really. She was scared. That's what she said. She's frightened.
Nói mẹ tôi sợ chạy vô trong.
That she was afraid. That's why she ran into the house.
In-house.
The Law Center came to their aid by obtaining an injunction in federal court, stopping the Klan from further harassment. But elsewhere, the Klan was far from giving up.
Are you willing to defend your homes and your families? Are you willing to protect your kids and stop these crimes in our great schools? White power! White power! White power! White power!
I think that you've got a lot of dedicated people there who are willing to spill every drop of blood in their body because they feel as though their family is threatened, their community is threatened, and a way of life that they've known and loved to be dear, it means everything to them.
Are they willing to spill other people's blood?
Without a doubt.
And they did. This time it was Jewish radio host Alan Berg, who was gunned down for speaking out against racial hate groups. And they had others in mind. Bodyguards shielded the center's attorneys, but they could not protect the center itself. On the night of July 28, 1983, the center was firebombed. With information provided by the center's investigators, Joe Garner and two fellow Klansmen were charged and convicted of arson. The new headquarters was funded by those who wanted to protect the center from further violence and encourage its continued operation. With increased intensity, they organized to watch the Klan and to gather information on white supremacists, skinheads, and other hate groups. These facts help anticipate racial incidents and support legal action.
Had a little problem with the Christian Knights.
Information is culled from public sources and an extensive network of informants.
Underground stuff. He don't want anybody to know where he lives, but I happen to know his address.
By processing the data, ClanWatch can monitor suspected individuals and organizations and their activities.
I'm always surprised at the number of calls that we get from people who say, I didn't realize the Klan was still a problem in this day and age, or how could this, murder of a Ethiopian man in Portland by skinheads be happening in 1988? And those comments alone make me realize how important exposing these kinds of incidents on a day-to-day basis is.
ClanWatch plays a leading role in exposing hate crimes across the country by providing intelligence to law enforcement agencies and information to the general public. But the center is equally committed to prevention through its innovative educational program called Teaching Tolerance. A biannual magazine is sent to more than 200,000 educators. Teaching kits, including specially produced videos and lesson plans, are being developed and sent to tens of thousands of elementary and secondary schools. The aim is to reach young minds before they become twisted by racial, ethnic, or religious bigotry. The materials suggest a variety of approaches for use by the classroom teacher.
It made me feel good because it shows that all white people didn't treat black people the same way. That's what I would be scared of, is that all the black people think that all the white people are the same, that everybody's really racist in their hearts. When everybody combined at the end, it made me feel really good.
Prejudice is going to live on forever. I mean, for the next 300 years, it will just be ongoing because, I mean, every family is raised up to hate another part of a different culture.
1%.
In furnishing these materials free of charge, the center underscores its commitment to a society that respects diversity and honors democracy.
Who didn't want you to vote. You knew he didn't want you to vote.
Educators themselves speak highly of the project.
And I think the nice thing about those materials, they were put together in conjunction with classroom teachers, parents, students, and staff who put that together. So I think the kinds of ideas that they promote in those materials are the kinds of things that need to be used in the classroom. I think they're excellent materials to be used.
It's an opportunity to make a difference in the next generation of people in this country and make a difference in what they think and feel about prejudice and racism.
When racial violence does occur, the center's hard-hitting legal strike force stands ready to respond. The long-term goal is to curb the activities of hate groups and bring them to justice in the courts. The team's legal and investigative skills have proved effective weapons in combating the Klan and other white supremacist groups. Former United States Attorney Sam Curran, who prosecuted a criminal case in collaboration with the Law Center, remembers their work.
They knew every fact and detail of their case. They interviewed witnesses, they re-interviewed witnesses, they tracked down all leads. I've never seen anything like it. I have never seen an effort put into a case like Morris Dees and Richard Cohen and this Law Center did in preparing for that first Klan trial in North Carolina.
But that evidence that was found led a trail right back to this young man sitting right here.
In Portland, Oregon, the center took on the leaders of the White Aryan Resistance, a nationwide racist organization. Its wrongful death civil lawsuit named Tom Metzger and his son John as co-conspirators in the murder of Mulugeta Sarah, an Ethiopian student.
Kenneth Miski walked up behind him. He took that baseball bat and he slapped him beside the head. Full swing. A swing.
Dees argued that the Metzgers had sent an agent to train the local skinheads to carry out acts of racial violence.
On his knees, probably unconscious. Miski stood over him with that bat, stretched his legs out like this, and he came down on him twice, just like this, with such a force, just took the whole top of his head off. Smetzger said he's a small businessman. You got one of the most unusual businesses in the United States. But that business is making money on selling hate. In America, we have the right to hate, but we don't have the right to hurt.
The jury agreed. For all its extensive work, the Southern Poverty Law Center receives no public funds, nor does it charge fees or accept portions of monetary awards it wins. The center's activities are financed by individual citizens throughout the country who share its concerns and goals. It is with their support that the center's work has attained national prominence and attention.
The Ku Klux Klan's violent history in the South is legendary. Our last story tonight is about that ideology and an Alabama lawyer, Morris Dees.
Tonight, an unparalleled story of terror and courage. James Knowles was once a high-ranking member of the Klan.
In recent years, the national media has begun to recognize what the Law Center's supporters already know, that their organization is at the center of fighting injustice, using legal means others have ignored or fear to apply.
The location, Mobile, Alabama.
The Klan wanted the message to get back to the black people of not just Alabama, but the whole United States, that we would not stand for a black person killing a white police officer and getting away with it.
Their plan was to find a black man, any black man, and kill him.
And we got in the gun, and then later that night, well, I tied the hangman's noose in Henry's car.
Before the night was out, they found a victim, 19-year-old Michael Donnell, and went through with their plan.
That's what we were doing. We were hunting black people.
Throat cut,
yeah,
face battered, clothing disarray, wounds in the hands. That's your work.
Yeah, it is.
The two actual killers were eventually tracked down. James Tiger Knowles confessed and pleaded guilty. Henry Hayes was convicted of murder.
The case of Michael Donnell might have been closed forever, but the trial caught the attention of a longtime legal foe of the Ku Klux Klan, Morris Dees, founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Dees felt that the Klan organization and its officers should be held responsible for the murder as well. The center sued the United Klans of America for damages on behalf of the victim's mother, Beulah May Donnell.
I told him I'll ask God for strength, and he'll give it to me, and I'll let him know. So I did. I went through with it.
After a 4.5-hour deliberation, all the Klansmen named in the suit were ordered to pay, along with the United Klans of America, $7 million in damages. It was a landmark decision.
The United Klans was put out of business, and its leadership forced to pay damages. Though Klan assets amounted to but a fraction of the award, the Klan had to deed its national headquarters to Mrs. Donnell, a black woman. Reflecting on the case, Morris Dees has found in the experience lessons that transcend the verdict and bring meaning to what the Poverty Law Center is all about.
I think one of the most memorable and dramatic moments that I've ever had in a courtroom was at the end of the Donnell trial. I'd finished my closing argument, the Klan lawyer had finished his, and James Knowles, one of the defendants, stood up and asked the judge if he could say something to the jury. He walked over in front of the jury and he said, "Everything that Mr. Dees said we did, we did." He said, "We did it at the direction of those Klansmen sitting right over there, those leaders." And then he turned to Mrs. Donnell. He said, "Miss Donnell, I've lost everything that I ever had in my life, my home, my family. I'm in prison for life. I'd like to ask you if you could find it in your heart to forgive me." And she kind of rocked back in her chair and looked at him in front of that jury and said, "Son, I've already forgiven you." There wasn't a dry eye in that courtroom.
at our council table, in that jury box, and even on the bench. This old woman who had lost her son, one of the most precious things in her life, was able to reach out to that teenage Klansman, who himself a victim of racism and prejudice, and forgive him. It was a love that we hear so much about, but know so little of. Her words in that courtroom that day was a higher justice than that $7 million verdict from that jury. And I thought to myself, if that could be transcended out of that courtroom, that love, that understanding of people who are different from each other, if we could change the hearts and minds of people of all races and religions and cultures, both black and white and others in this country, if we could teach tolerance and understanding, then we might could prevent future Michael Donalds and prevent future killings like the skinheads did in Portland, Oregon.
As long as hearts and minds need changing, the men and women of the Southern Poverty Law Center will do their part.